So section 4 begins by talking about hallucinogens. In a novel perception, hallucinogens refer to the things that take place in the absence of sensory stimuli. So you see or hear things that aren't really there. In the drug category of hallucinogens, however, the perception shifts to that of altering existing perceptions, and the user believes these trips have a deeper spiritual and psychological meaning. Hallucinogens profoundly alter the consciousness and produce peculiar experiences. LSD, or acid, is a type of hallucinogen that predominantly produces visual distortions. When someone is using LSD, they often see images of intense color, yet they are often unaware that these perceptions are not real. Albert Hofmann discovered LSD, and after its discovery, LSD was studied as a possible treatment to psychiatric disorders like depression and OCD, but it was proven unsuccessful. Hallucinogens are diverse in the neuronal activities that they do. So, like an example would be muscarine affects ACH systems, while mescaline affects noradrenergic and serotonergic systems. LSD, mescaline, and psilocybin all act as a serotonin receptor agonist or partial agonists, especially at 5-HT2A receptors, which are found in the visual cortex. Ketamine, or Special K, is different from the rest of the hallucinogens because it is the only one currently used in medicine. PET scans reveal that low doses of ketamine possess a potent antidepressant effect and may be good for resistant causes of depression. Ketamine acts as an NMDA receptor antagonist and is classified as a dissociative drug. Dissociative drugs produce dreamlike states in which consciousness is partially separated from the sensory inputs. MDMA, or ecstasy, is a derivative of an amphetamine that leads to memory disturbance and depression in chronic use. Short-term effects of ecstasy include positive emotions, empathy, euphoria, and colorful visions, although we're not really sure how this occurs. Ecstasy is currently being studied for clinical treatment for treatment-resistant PTSD. So drug abuse and addiction are widespread problems. More people die due to smoking-related lung cancer a year than death-related to colon, breast, and prostate cancers combined. The social cost of drug abuse includes medical and social costs, lost hours at work, increased crime associated with illicit drugs, and damage to children exposed to uterine and external parental drug use. Annually, about 2.16 million people in the U.S. suffer from substance-related disorder. So researchers have several models that help us understand drug abuse. One model is the moral model. This is the earliest approach to explaining drug abuse, and it is simply saying that we blame the substance abuser for a failure of moral character or a lack of self-control. This has some religious aspects to it, however, there is no evidence that morality-based campaigns actually have an impact on drug abuse. The next model is the disease model. The person who abuses the drug requires medical treatment rather than moral exhortation or punishment. This justifies spending money to research drug abuse. However, the term disease is usually used when we can identify a physical or biochemical condition that initiates the problem, but we can't do that with drug abuse, meaning this model does not explain how addiction arises. This model also says we take drugs to make up for a lack of endogenous substances. So an example would be taking opioids to make up for a lack of endorphins. The physical dependence model argues that people take drugs in order to avoid unpleasant withdrawal symptoms. This model is also known as withdrawal avoidance model, and it explains why addicts go through great lengths to get the drugs, but it does not explain how addiction forms. Withdrawal symptoms are often dysphoric, meaning they produce miserable negative feelings as opposed to the drug's pleasant feelings. The positive reward model proposes that people get started with drug abuse and become addicted because the abused drug provides powerful reinforcement. This is seen when lab animals push levers to inject themselves with drugs, and it's also seen in dopamine release in the nucleus accumbens for conventional rewards like food or winning money. This model leads to exclusive compulsive drug seeking. People also differ in their vulnerability to drug use. Just because one person becomes addicted doesn't mean the next person will or anyone else will. So factors that contribute to vulnerability of drug use include biological factors. Males are actually more likely than females to abuse drugs, and there's a slight genetic predisposition to both alcohol and opiate and cocaine use. This can be mitigated, however, by involved and attentive parenting. Another factor is family situation, which means family breakup, poor relationships with parents, and the presence of an antisocial sibling are associated with drug abuse. Another vulnerability is personal characteristics. This is seen when aggressiveness and poor emotional control are associated with drug abuse. However, educational goals and maturity are associated with a lower likelihood of drug use. Environmental factors are also another vulnerability to drug use. This shows that high prevalence of drug use in the community, especially among peers, predisposes an individual to drug use. In the environmental factor, we have this notion of cue-induced drug use. This is when one has an increased likelihood to use a drug in the same context if they previously used the same drug, and it is not limited to long-term users, as it can happen to anybody. Preventing and treating drug abuse and dependence also follows models. It's different from person to person, but for the most part it follows kind of like a medical uniform idea. So one medical approach to doing so is lessening the discomfort of withdrawal. So an example would be how benzodiazepines help withdrawal symptoms during early drug-free periods. A second medical approach would be providing alternatives to the addictive drug. So we would give methadone instead of heroin, because methadone increases the appetite for heroin and decreases withdrawal symptoms. Another approach is directly blocking the actions of the addictive drug. This is seen in Narcan, as Narcan blocks heroin's actions, but it may produce its own harsh withdrawal symptoms. Another medical approach is altering the metabolism of the abused drug, which is seen with antabuse, as antabuse makes you nauseated if you drink alcohol after taking it. The last medical approach is to block the brain's reward system. So this would be done by treating dopamine receptor blockers to reduce the activity of the mesolimbical cortical pathway, causing drugs of abuse to lose most of their pleasurable qualities. And this section just concludes by pointing out that researchers have been trying to use vaccines similar to what we get in a flu shot to help alleviate drug dependence and abuse. However, there's not really conclusive findings to support this. And that's pretty much it.